Okay, I think it is 12. All right, it is 12, so let's get started. So welcome everyone to the February Quality Talk. Thanks for coming out on a snowy day. I'm Tina Fletcher, your KWSQA president. Just a couple quick announcements here before we get started with today's talk. Sue wants to make sure that I'm well understood in this room. Okay, so a couple things about Targeting Quality, which is our conference this September. So we've been getting a lot of submissions for talk proposals for the conference, which is awesome. We've taken a quick look, just kind of generally where they're coming from and what kind of proposals they are. And I just wanted to highlight a couple of things that we noticed. So one is that a lot of the submissions are coming from outside of Kitchener-Waterloo area. And so that's cool, but also we really like having local speakers at our conference. So if you or anyone you know in the local area hasn't gotten around to submitting your talk idea yet, we would love to hear from you. We do value having speakers from our own community at the conference, as well as bringing in people from other areas for their perspectives too. The other thing is the lightning talks have been really popular at our conference in the last 2 years, and we've gotten great feedback about how everybody likes those, but we don't have any submissions for lightning talks yet. So if you want to keep seeing lightning talks at our conference, which are the shorter 15-minute talks, then again, I would really encourage you to submit one. It's a great way to get started if you don't have a lot of speaking experience as well, or if you just have a topic that's small and you don't want to put together a full-length talk for it. So yeah, would love to see more submissions from the community and also for the lightning talks. Also on the conference, we now have our sponsor packages sorted out and ready to go for this year. So if your company is interested in sponsoring the conference in any capacity, if you visit our website, you will now find all the details about how to do that and what the different sponsorship options are. On the testing games front, we have a testing games event coming up in about a month from now. It's on March 31st, and our partner for this event is Shiny Docs. So stay tuned for more information about how to register for that. We'd love to see you. It'll be Wednesday, March 31st in the evening at Maxwell's Event Center as usual. And my phone has gone to sleep, so I'm talking too long, I guess. What was my last announcement? Oh, that was it, actually. So I will introduce Sue then. So today we are lucky enough to have Sue Johnston here to present a talk for us. This is actually not her first time speaking at the KWSQA. She spoke here about 5 years ago, and an interesting tidbit that I heard from her was that she was really nervous about speaking here for the first time because she thought, oh man, the audience is going to be full of testers and they're going to notice all my mistakes. But I assured her that we are a very welcoming audience and would not be pointing out any potential errors. So help me make that true. With that, I will turn it over to Sue. We'll just do a bit of a mic transition here.
All right. Thank you very much. This is the first time I've had 2 mics when I've spoken, so we're in a bit of a space here. Are we good? Can we hear everybody? All right. So I thank you all for coming today. As we heard, I've done this before and I was terrified, and this time I wasn't until I looked at a recording of this talk that I did in Winnipeg a year ago, and I realized that the value of this talk is all about what comes from the audience. So this is a highly, highly participative talk. And so you guys are all well positioned to participate. And you have a handout that's sort of going to guide you through what we're doing today. So we'll get it going. I will tell you that we're going to get started right now by introducing you to a guy named Folsom. Now, I have to be very careful when I talk about Folsom because this is actually a story that comes from Waterloo. So I have him cleverly disguised so that he won't be known. Some of you may or may not know the actual person. Some of you may or may not work in the organization that had him employed in his day. But anyway, Folsom was a hero. He was a dev, smart guy, really good dev, worked lots of hours, stayed late. If something was wrong, we'd go to Folsom to have it fixed. And Folsom would happily oblige because he got a lot of reward for it. He got the strokes, he got the little dopamine hit whenever anybody went, hey, Folsom, good job, or wow, here's money for lunch, or something like that. So Folsom was really good. And what happened was more and more the team became to rely on the dude. And he was doing a lot of work, he was always there, he was starting to be in a situation where nobody could really touch his code because he had written it in a hurry, because things had been in a rush and only he could do it. And so it got so that he became the bottleneck. And he also got a little bit burned out. And he got fed up and he left. He went off to Shopify or Google or one of those, fancy high-tech companies that some of you may be working for. And he was missed at first. And after a while, people started to go, Folsom used to do that. Or, does anybody know how to do that? Only Folsom knew how to do that, right? And so eventually they had to learn and figure it out, and life went on. And so I would like to invite you to share with me if you have ever worked with a person like Folsom. And when I do this, and I've done this talk a few times, almost everyone in the room puts up their hand. And then the second question I'll have to ask is, who has ever been Folsom? Hands up. A lot of us, for good reasons sometimes. And sometimes it's because of our personality, sometimes it's because of the situation that we're in. I have to admit that all the places where you see flames, in my past, I have been Folsom, or some variation of him. And I'm most embarrassed about this one, because I was a contractor. I didn't have any skin in the game at all. And yet I was spending my life and doing things and trying to save a project that was on the rocks. It was led by a crazy person, and we were tears every day. Anyway, I'm saying this because it's something that we all have done. It's something that we all know people who are doing. It's something that we know costs us personally and organizationally, and it's something we can do something about. So in the next few minutes, we're going to talk about heroes, how to not be one. The big idea is that heroes are expensive to our organizations, to our teams, and to ourselves. And we'll generate some ideas together, as I've warned you, and have some fun with this idea, as well as get something practical out of it, I hope. I don't pretend to be an expert in heroes or anti-heroes, but I have worked with a few, and I've been it, and I've talked about this for a couple of years now. And a lot of ideas come from the people that I speak with about this. So in the next 50 minutes or so, we'll look at the characteristics of heroes, how we spot them. We'll look at what causes it. We'll look at the impact they have on our organizations and what we can do about it. I'll draw your attention to the handout that all of you have, and if you don't have one, holler and someone will bring you one. It kind of will guide you through some of the interactive activities that we're doing. And I have on the back, there's a bit of a slider mappy thing that can give you some clues. It also can be useful to you when you go back to your office and have to deal with discussions about heroics. So, how do we spot a hero? Do they wear capes with a big S on them? I'm going to give you a minute to write in the conveniently located box at the top of your handout. This one. What are some of the ways that heroes show up? How do they look? When I did this in Winnipeg a couple of years ago, somebody actually said they have a cape in their office that they wear when they're doing heroics. And it kind of caught me off guard. But generally speaking, we don't have heroes in capes, certainly not in Waterloo. So I'll give you a minute to write some things down. Thoughts that you have about how you spot a hero. And if you're wondering why I give you this silent moment to think, it's because I have learned over the years that people in software often like to think before they speak, which is a warning that we're going to be inviting you to speak later. So when you finish your paragraph or your thought, I'm going to invite you to talk with your neighbors, whatever convenient neighbor you have there. You may need to move to find one. Just about what you said and how you spot them. And then we'll get a call out of some of the things that you folks have come up with, and then my ideas as well. So go, Jabber. If you don't have a neighbor, find one. Okay. Little animated conversation here and there. Some people sitting it out. That's fine too. Finish your thought, and then we'll gather. Okay. So let's hear what some of the groups came up with. What are some of the ways that we can spot here? What are some of the clues or the triggers, or what do we see? Anyone? Maybe from this side of the room first. Go ahead.
They're either fully engaged or almost apathetic.
Yeah.
For that firefight.
Right, so they're either full on in or else they're checked out. And it's one extreme or the other quite often, right? And we're talking about the hero, or are we talking about the team also?
The hero.
Yeah.
The team is dragged along with the hero.
Yeah.
Not to be affected by that sense of.
But they're sort of phoning it in. Yeah. Good. Thank you for that one. Thank you for them all, actually. Two here.
They may not be sharing knowledge or information right now because they want to be ones to solve the problem.
Yeah. Because if I share knowledge, what happens? Someone else will be the hero, right? Don't want that. And behind.
For me, I was thinking like if you're at a startup company, everybody's a hero because there's only one person doing one particular task, like back-end development, Android development, the only QA tester. So you're by that point you're all individually subject matter experts, and so
Yeah.
all could be a bottleneck.
And you're the only one, and you could be a bottleneck, and you have to be a hero. And that whole.
You have to document everything so that nobody's going to stop asking you questions.
And meanwhile, you're out trying to get clients and raise money, right? So that whole startup culture that may or may not be valid has infected the entire software industry too, because we have people in the banks going, we need to act more like a startup, right? So that whole idea of needing to be a hero, that it's in the culture. What else? These are great.
And sometimes you don't want to be the expert.
No,
But
you have to.
you're forced to.
Yeah, so sometimes there are legitimate reasons to be a hero. What else happens sometimes with heroes? What else have we seen? You guys had lively conversations, so something happened.
Some heroes have a real need to have very tight control over
Mm.
the code or the product to the point that they throw other people's changes out and rewrite them.
Oh yeah, only I can do this. Only I can fix this. Only I. Don't touch my code. Don't even look at it, right? So there's that. Thank you. What else?
Or highly engaged in things outside of their responsibility.
They got to be at every meeting. Every single meeting, they're there. Why are they there? Do they need to be there? No. They want to know what's going on so that they can have their tentacles into it quite often. So that's pretty common. Any more from our group before we start on the ones I thought of? Andrew,
Process doesn't apply to them.
do you want to say more about that and louder?
Heroes bypass processes regularly.
Ooh.
They know
Mm.
better.
The rules are not for us. Mm. I've been there. Who else has been there? Thank you. Others. So we had another one. Thank you.
Some of the times the heroes are actually the villains to begin with.
Say more. I think I know where you're going.
They'll cause the problem, but then swoop in and fix it.
That is called Munchausen by proxy. And it's very common in nurses and firefighters. We start the fire so that we can be a hero and put it out. We misuse the medication so that we can look like a hero when we spot the problem and save the life. And thank you for raising that, because it's a really serious problem in a lot of organizations. The other thing that sometimes happens is I might imagine that, let's imagine that Josh and Andrew work together. And they're quite lovely friends. And yet I see a little, prickliness one day, and then I just kind of poke at it, and I come to Josh and I go, ooh, that Andrew's really getting under your skin, isn't he? Right? And then I go to Andrew and I go, what's wrong with Josh? He seems so testy. And what I'm doing now is dividing you further. And then I'm going to come in and have the meeting that gets you all lovey-dovey again, right? We start a problem sometimes when we are a hero that makes the problem worse so that we can come in and save it. So any more before we get into the ones that I thought of? Okay, let's see what I put. They're at the center of every crisis, right? They're always the one that's coming in and saving it. So we could be suspicious that maybe they have something to do with why did it cost. They rush in to save the day. And sometimes, as we heard earlier, they may push others away out because only their solution is going to be good. They can intervene without the full story. That's partly why they want to be at every meeting. But sometimes they can come in and they have partial information and they know what to do, and they come in and they strongly and willfully, and because we let them, they do it. And they may actually solve the wrong problem. Anyone seen that? We get in there, I know what's wrong. I go in and fix it, and that makes it worse. Seen that? Anyone? Anyone work for a bank? No. Okay. They seem to create, as we talked earlier, they seem to create problems to solve. And the arsonist that calls in the fire and then is the hero to put it out. They work long hours, abusively long hours, and they're rewarded handsomely and often for it. They have, we talked about it, only I can fix it. And then at a certain point, they start to feel kind of only, I'm doing all the work around here. And resentment starts to build. So why does this happen? What leads to heroics? You won't be surprised that I'm going to ask you to think about this on your own and write it in the second box. I'll give you a minute. And then when you think you've done enough thinking on your own, talk to your neighbor again. What causes this? Sometimes they're super legitimate causes. Okay. You guys never went to kindergarten, I guess. When the Agile trick that all the Agile coaches are teaching everybody is when we put up our hand, they all put up their hand and stop talking, and I just expect it to happen. Silences the room very quickly, but it didn't work in this case. So, some good conversations, some ideas came up. Let's think about the ones first that are, what are the things that lead to heroics for individuals? So what are the individual idiosyncrasies or personality traits or whatever that might make someone be a hero as opposed to the system or the organization, which we'll talk about in the next set. So individual issues. What came up?
Insecurity about a job performance.
Insecurity about job performance. Yeah, that's usually the last one that comes up. So are we a little more nervous here than we are in other cities? I don't know, but it came up first. Yeah, so sometimes that's a legitimate fear, and sometimes not so much, right? That was totally mine when I was working in newspapers and when I was in the banks. I don't know why. I had a job when I got those. I could have moved on. But I was terrified, like the shame of being fired was going to be, kill me.
In a similar vein, like loss of recognition or identity. So as an organization grows and you're used to knowing lots of things in the larger organization.
Yeah, I'm the smart guy. I'm known and seen as someone who knows stuff. I have a lot of status. Now, some of you will be familiar with the work that's happening in neuroscience these days, where people have recognized through MFRIs or MRFIs or whatever those things they stick in your head are, that there is parts of your brain that cannot distinguish between a psychological threat or a status threat and an actual physical threat. Your brain just gets freaked out equally, And so that status threat is really, really super important and is starting to be supported by actual physical scientific research. So thanks for that one. Any more? Individual characteristics, yeah.
Leadership styles, but very specifically rewarding bad behaviors.
Uh-huh. Do you want to say more about that?
Not necessarily specifically the arsonist side of things, but we talked earlier in the last one about bad coding practices, swooping in to get something done, looking like the savior. If you reward those behaviors without looking to see what they actually did, you're just going to promote them to doing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, and
Making it worse.
And you are telegraphing one of the later sessions on the impact of this. And so thank you for that. We may call on you again. Yeah, so it may be other things. Anything else come up? And you had a lively conversation back there. What happened? You were talking. Did you come up with something new? Be loud.
I worked in a company before, and that company was bought by a new one.
Ooh.
So all the bosses were replaced by the ones of the new company. So I had a teammate that began to behave like that, like he didn't want to share information because he wanted to shine by himself.
Oh, yeah. Look at me, new boss, because I want to be a star. I want you to keep me. Yeah, very common. And that's a little bit that whole also purchase of a company can be a systemic thing, which we'll talk about in a minute, right? Because the culture of one company is going to be very, very different from the next one. I worked in a magazine one time that, the people who bought us were just, as far as we were all concerned, they were flaming idiots. And so everybody quit, but the culture was really palpably different. So any more before we look at the ones I came up with? Okay, let's see what I said. Adrenaline junkies. Anybody know somebody like that? We love that excitement. Think about it. In the old days, I can remember being at BMO, Bank of Montreal, in the war room, right? And things were going wrong. And we had to save them. And it was a team thing to save it, but it was a disaster, but it was fun. And so there was that excitement of things going wrong. And I had a boss at the time whose previous job had been to be the PR guy for Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau. And he used to create situations in which it felt like an emergency because he felt that he got more out of his people by having these fake emergencies all the time. And it worked. So there was one. Adrenaline junkies, deriving their self-worth from fixing things. This is very common with the engineering mindset. Our brains are problem solvers, just problem solvers. And so, show me a problem and I want to fix it, right? And it's just a natural thing. All of us probably in this room have a certain amount of that. And some people have it even more strong. And again, I may find that my status is in being able to fix things. I used to I'm on very thin ice here. I used to race sailboats with my husband, who was a very, very excellent sailor. And I was okay. But it used to make me crazy if he would come in to help, right? And so there was that need of the person who knows he's better to come in and help you crank that winch or help you write that code or help you run that retrospective or whatever it is you're doing. So sometimes they just know they can do a better job, and so they do it. And sometimes that makes the others feel a little bit left out. Sometimes they're an attention seeker, a little bit like your person who was trying to save their job when the takeover came. Anybody know an attention seeker? What's some characteristics of them you want to say?
They want to be a center of attention.
Yeah.
They want to do everything, so the focus would be on that.
Yeah. And maybe there's something missing in their life. Maybe they have an unmet need. Maybe it's just the way they always grew up. Maybe they were a solo child. There's all kinds of reasons for it. But they may seek attention somewhere because they're not getting something somewhere else. Desire to look smart came up already. Some people have a rescuer personality. I went through a phase like that. And then we have the other two, fear. And fear is usually the last one that comes up when I do this talk, and it was the first one that came here: fear of losing status, fear of actually losing your job, which may or may not be a legitimate fear. Anything else come up as a result of our conversation here? Reminders? Okay, let's go on to systemic issues that you talked about.
Success, as in this firefighting behavior has been successful in the past, so why keep doing it?
Yeah, so they did the behavior, they got away with it, they were rewarded maybe, and it continues and continues. And it can be really dangerous because that person may get so successful they get promoted into management. What else, systemic-wise? We have the culture purchase thing.
Poorly defined requirements are like the pile of oily rags and the faulty water leads to the bucket.
It's just waiting to blow up, right? Yeah. So this whole thing about unclear objectives, unclear roles, unclear anythings. And so because I don't know what my job is, and because no one has told me, and because there's this big backlog of stuff that we don't know what's going on, I'm going to do whatever I can, and I might do everything, and I'm just going to, be kind of frantic. And that's a very common one. Anything else in the system? We've got two here. Let's start with the back.
Because the hero always saves the day, you don't need to really do a good job. You don't need to worry about
I step aside. He's going to do it. Josh will fix that, right? Yeah, so that's one. I'm losing my technology here. Thank you for that. Andrew?
The system rewards individuals.
Uh-huh. When was the last time you were on a team that got a team reward? Put up your hand if you ever. Oh, we have a few. That almost never happens. Yay, Waterloo, right? But the system tends to reward individual effort, right? And that's a big issue. I have another Bank of Montreal story. I was working on a big cross-functional team. It was early days of Agile. It was an XP project. We had a big team. We used to take 15 minutes out of every meeting to try to figure out how we would create a team evaluation that would be part of and included in our performance reviews. And 15 minutes at every weekly meeting, we spent it, and we got a really good thing. It was mapped to the global issues, and it was mapped to our personal issues, and it was all tidied up. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful thing. We took it to human resources, and they said, oh, we can't do that. But if we were to do that now, I think human resources would go for it, because human resources is struggling now to figure out how to reward teams. How do we make it so that the individual is not sort of the paramount and rewarded person, that we kind of reinforce collaboration. And as long as the reward system rewards me for being a star, then I'm going to continue to do what I do, right? So anything else about the system that came up in your conversations? Yeah?
Unrealistic timelines.
Unrealistic timelines. Why do those happen? All the time, she mouths. And why, we might ask. And all of us might answer, we have no clue. And we'll talk a bit about that later in the talk, because I have a quote from a fella. So anything more before we look at my, oh, yes, thanks.
We spoke about how people around the hero might have created the hero, and the fact that they always went to this person, they started going to this person, and they went, oh, well, they solved the problem, so
Yeah.
let's go back, and rather than spreading the pain around the whole team to try and
Yeah, so if you're the smart person and I go to you all the time and you give me the answers, then why would I think about it myself? And when I spoke in Ann Arbor. I did this talk there a few years ago, or maybe last year. And one of the women in the group said, I just stopped answering their questions and told them where the information was. And that was a solution for her. And it was interesting to her because the team got way more competent once she stopped babysitting them. Anything more before we go on?
I wrote the media because something like.
Do you want to be louder?
I wrote the media. And I wrote that because shows like Mr. Robot being this like genius that knows everything. And so
Could work. Anybody want to say more about that? How did it work? Just ignore that. It's my phone, which I failed to turn off. I'm probably going to jail. All right, let's see what I came up with. Praise. We're going to continue to pick on Josh because he's sitting close. So Josh did this amazing thing. He worked all weekend, and I go, wow, Josh, that was fabulous. And he gets a little dopamine hit from that praise and reward. Bosses set the example. Bosses can set an example of working crazy hours themselves or doing, the I alone can save it. Bosses can also set a good example. I have a story again from Bank of Montreal. I was working in a place which was generally pretty crazy, and they brought in a new person to be my boss, and she was the vice president of something or other. And at 5:45, she used to walk through the office, and she'd say, I'm going home. You should too. And she would leave. And until then, we had been one of those places where at 10 o'clock in the evening, you would still be there in the office and you'd bump into your friends at the photocopier, and it was pretty nutsy. And as a result of her work, doing that kind of on a regular basis, most people started being out of the office by 6 o'clock unless there was a true emergency. I told that story in Ann Arbor, and someone said, I got a better story. So her story was, when her boss walked through the office at 5:45, it was, you're still here. What am I not doing that's keeping you here? Wow. I do. I get goosebumps when I tell that story because it shows the things that a leader can do when they're motivated, or that we take our cues from them. So if our leader is a crazy hero themselves, we emulate them. If they're setting a good example, then that's a good thing too. Another one, this one is this idea that unless you're all in, you're not dedicated. This is very common when I talk in the States or when I deal with people in the US. That, there are people, something like 30% of the people in the United States don't take their holidays. Like there's this thing that, we've got to live for our work. It's particularly problematic for men, partly because until recently they didn't expect much from the women. They expected us to go home and deal with our children in our homes and stuff like that. But why is he going home? Is he going to be playing golf or something? Like watching Netflix? He should be here, testing that code. The other one is recruiting unicorns and rock stars and ninjas. We put it in the ads, right? Look at the ads and the job descriptions. Like, why would we want to work with a ninja? Those people are killers. But we do it, and we expect it. And as long as it's part of our job description, what's going to happen? We're going to do it, yeah. So we got to figure out what to do about that. What other things? Came to poor planning, and that ties back to your story about things always in a rush, always in a rush. Lack of succession planning is another related. We don't have enough people trained up to do the work. Sometimes Ace Boy really is the only person who can do that work. And delayed decisions. These guys on the 48th floor are taking so long to make up their mind. I'm going to just do it, right? So we take, as sort of somebody pointed out earlier, we sometimes bypass the rules and we just go ahead and do it because it's been sitting in the backlog for so long. So that's one of them. Other things that came up, bonus for extraordinary work. Thanks, you guys, for working all weekend. I'm so glad we got that through. Here's $500 for you guys to all go out for dinner. Anyone seen that one? Good luck getting dinner for $500 for a bunch of people. But it's one of those things that as long as we're rewarding that extraordinary stuff, it becomes normalized. And the other one, which Andrew pointed out earlier, is no reward for teamwork. We've got to start having that conversation. Oh, so what's the impact? We talked about impact, yeah?
One that didn't show up there for me is overwhelming cultural bias towards specialization.
Do you want to say more about that? Loudly?
So you hire people because they have deep experience in something, and then you just pile it on. So very specialized, and you don't share their competence in any way, shape, or form. So they become a potential hero.
Yeah, and that ties a little bit into what you said about the startup culture, where there really only is one person who does that. As we grow, if we don't share that and build that sort of succession planning, if you win the lottery tomorrow, we are in trouble, right? Serious trouble. So the more we can share, the better off things are going to be. So, do you have a ticket?
No, I did not win.
Right. So take a minute or two to think about the impact of this whole phenomenon. What does it do for us as individuals or against us? What does it do for or against our organization? And what about the team? Think about that for a minute and then talk to your friends. There is something wrong with my timer. It tells me I've been talking for 16 minutes. It's got to have been more than that. So when you've done enough thinking, talk to your neighbor. Boy, it's quiet talking. So, what interesting ideas came up for you? Sorry to cut you off. It looked like it was animated and could have gone on until 3:30. What are some of the ideas that came up? Burnout. Yeah, I heard that from other parts of the room as well. Burnout, serious. Burnout on whose part?
Well, everybody's putting in extra time.
Yeah, we're all putting in extra time because we're doing the heroics, or it may be just our hero gets burned out. It may be that we get the opposite of burned out, which is we check out, right? Another one, what else? Where did that lovely voice come from? Do you want to say it again?
Impact on your family.
Impact on your family. Yeah, that's a personal and family one, which is crazy. You know, Dad's always at work. Dad's never coming home. And Mom is always on her phone when she's with me even. Yeah. Well, yeah.
Disruption from the people weekday burnout and turnover.
Yeah, so serious problems, serious organizational problem, turnover. People burn out, they leave. I mean, especially in this market, you can go pretty much anywhere. Somebody's always hiring. So that's really serious for organizations. What else?
The product quality can decrease and become harder to maintain due to a lot of hot-fix Band-Aid solutions.
Yeah. We're always patching things instead of actually getting them right, because we're always in this rush, and sometimes we're looking at code that was done in a hurry, and things are not good there. Thank you. What else? Yeah?
The team can become more envious of that hero. Praise or bonuses and
Yeah, I start to not like Josh. Yeah. It's like, and he's one of the most likable people we know, right? But yeah, it's like he's always getting all the glory, he's always getting all the bonuses, he always gets the bigger monitor, and he gets the good gig, right? So yeah, resentment, lovely. Anything else? Yeah.
The organization becomes fragile, so you're at risk of this person winning the lottery or getting hit by the bus and not knowing how to replace what they do or what they know.
Big holes, yeah, big risk there. Well, risk is coming down the pipe. What? Anything else before we go to mine?
I've had larger teams where we have people like that, and they just sometimes do the work or do the important pieces of the work, pass it out to everybody else, so that other people never really get to learn and progress.
Yeah, you're always getting the good gig, and I'm never getting it. And so again, that resentment thing comes in.
Plus, I think that creates animosity.
Yeah, animosity, and also we check out sometimes. Yeah, we can check out. So let's see what I had. It's not sustainable. I did some work with a phone company a few years ago where I was there for a number of weeks, and every weekend, these two guys were working the weekend. They were trying to be Agile coaches while trying to be project managers while trying to be something else, and they were every single weekend. And it was always, oh, it'll be over soon, it'll be over soon, it'll be over soon. I was there for something like 3 months, and they worked every single weekend. Now they're not there anymore, right? But it was not sustainable because people would just not put up with it, and yet we do. Always patching, not fixing. Serious. Right? We talked about that a bit. Firefighting. When we're fighting fires, we don't have to do our real work, right? So that doesn't get done because there's this emergency that we have to, it surpasses everything. Nobody wants to touch you don't have any visibility into the problems because Josh has done it all. I don't know what's going on. He's away, or he's left, or he's burned out, or he's been sulking in the corner, whatever he's doing. And I don't know what's going on. So we have no visibility into the problems. Nobody wants to touch his code. Nobody else can work it. They don't understand it. We've also created a dependency on somebody, right? As long as Josh's going to do that, why should I bust my butt? Right? Sorry to pick on you, Josh. You did sit close. Here's another of my favorites. Unsociable hours are normalized. Right? This is the way we do things here. We're all in. We work from 8 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at night, and that's just the way you do it. And if you want to work here, then that's the way it is. You've got to be rock star, ninja, unicorn. We got the startup culture, even though we're a bank. Proactive efforts look like a liability. I have a terrible story to tell you. Are you up for it? It's a tester story. It's a sad tester story. Okay, I believe it may come from this community. I'm not sure where I got it. There was this guy, a tester, who used to work with the devs. They loved working with him because they prevented issues that would come up later, right? Tester working collaboratively with the devs as they build the code, watching for trouble. Problems solved before they happened. And this tester got fired. And why do you suppose this tester got fired? He was being evaluated on escape defects. So, no defects? Where's your value, Bob? Right? So this was a tragedy for that organization because he was like the most loved tester. He was doing work, they were preventing problems, and yet the system rewarded the wrong thing. That's my saddest tester story. Some team members check out, we've talked about that. Less skilled team members may copy the hero, right? I see what Josh is doing. I'm seeing him getting all the rewards and the big monitor and he has like really nice headphones that the company paid for. So I'm kind of going like, what is he doing? So I start being like him or being like what I see him doing, right? He may be fabulous and I'm just kind of like a really pale imitation of that, but especially younger and new will emulate the crazy rock star person. Resentment, we talked about that. So what can we do about it? This is where it gets interesting. I want you to think about that on your own. What can we do about it as organizations and as individuals? And how can we get brave enough to do something about it? That's the other thing. We're going to be talking about courage in a minute because it's a big value. Anyone doing Scrum? Scrum value, courage. Anybody doing XP? XP value, courage. Any Agile coaches in here? Only me. Else I won't give that talk. Oh, we got one. Courage is a coaching value as well. So think about it a minute. See what happens. By now, it's probably clear that some of these things are things that we can actually deal with as individuals, and some of them are things we have to take up with our bosses rather than ignore them year after year after year. So who has some ideas about what we can do? Anyone?
Set realistic schedules and put people on lower utilization so they have time for discussions, meetings, mentoring, sharing, documenting.
Be realistic about what people's capacity actually is.
Yeah. Place puts everybody at 80%.
Yeah.
Account for that on schedules.
Yeah.
They're not spending
Because we see those companies where you're 20% here and you're 20% here, and it adds up to 140%. And even if it adds for 100, there's no slack, and slack is needed for us to actually think and have some time. So yeah, create some realistic schedules, and that's something that we can do if we're bosses. Who in here leads a team or is a boss? That's something really important for us to think about. But if we are not the boss, what can we do? We can have our own conversation with the boss, perhaps. We can set our own schedule. When I did this in, I think it was in Winnipeg, guy said, I was the hero, I was running all the hours, and he said, I actually went to my boss and said, I need to get paid for this. And they said, okay, I will. So they're paying him overtime, not helping the organization at all, but it's certainly making his life a little bit better. But letting them know that there's a cost to this, right? A conversation needs to happen. What else? Red shirt. Canadien.
Encourage and enforce documentation, so to share the knowledge for the rest of the team.
Share the knowledge. Yeah. Let people know where it is and make sure that it's up to date. Yeah. Beautiful. And so sharing the knowledge, other things that can happen. What else?
Recognize the value of preventing fires rather than
Do you want to say that again? Because it's worth repeating.
the value of preventing fires rather than dealing with them.
Yeah, let's make prevention a real thing, because so like a reward for escape defects is a bad reward. Let's figure out how we get the whole team to like not have any or something like that. What else came up for you guys? Over here.
These are a lot more concrete, but automated testing and quality gates, given the,
Keep going.
attendance here.
You're good. Yeah, so there's some things that need to be in place that we sometimes overlook. Things like quality, things like timeliness, things like architecture practices, like the technical practices have to still be honored. And in a lot of these agile companies, we focus so much on the teamworks and the collaboration that we forget, about things like technical debt and stuff like that. And Declan isn't here, but he would have something to say about that. Andrew, you had something?
Make your observations about the behavior public.
Call it out. Have a conversation. Bring it up at a retrospective.
There's a related pattern that I see often with this kind of heroic behavior, and that is that the hero becomes dismissive of the people around him.
Yeah, they're not as smart as I am. They don't do the work.
And it degenerates into toxicity for the team.
Yeah. You had something to say.
On the vein of like technical solutions, like encouraging a rollback culture and not like a let's keep patching quickly. So like it's okay to go back to a known good state that isn't like forward progression.
Yeah, and that takes a certain amount of planning and allowing for time, right? That we actually will get this in the backlog so we can do it, right? So what did I have? Mine might not be as good as yours. Stop the rewards. Just stop rewarding people for extraordinary behavior. You want to reward teamwork. You want to reward other things. Don't reward that individual craziness. Look at real success. Reward real success. Have meaningful metrics, like quality, like capacity, like. Is there product? You talked about unreliable products. Like, let's make sure that we're looking at stuff that really matters. Watch the risks. One of the things that can slow us down and create heroics is that we have an emergency that comes up. And if we had been watching carefully, monitoring the risks in any project or any of the work that we're doing, we would have seen it coming and been able to forestall it in many cases. But what happens is because we're so busy and we're head down, it just slams into us and all of a sudden we have an emergency. So bringing up the risks on a regular basis and taking a look at them, a serious look, and not go, oh, we did a risk assessment when we started this project and tick, 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 tick the boxes. Really look at it. Focus on the discipline. We talked about that, the discipline practices. Talk about it. Talk about it. Call it out. As Andrew said, as some of you have said, we need to recognize it and then say, okay, maybe I go and if I'm the boss, I go talk to my hero. I may want to coach my hero. I may want to say, maybe you could pair with her and see how things could work out. We want to figure out a way to get this happening so that we acknowledge it rather than have this resentment building. Watch for information hoarders. Where is that? Is my battery dead? This is interesting. I wonder what this means. It could be. It's like 2 minutes to go. Well, anyway, it never happened before. Well, anyway, you can't see what I'm going to tell you, but I'm going to tell you anyway. Watch for information hoarders. Coach the heroes. Make sane hours a goal. I was, again, back at the phone company, there was like 4 weeks where they actually focused on getting out of the office at 6 o'clock, and they did it. And as long as they focused on that, they were really good at it. They slid back, of course, but that was, at least it could be done. Coach the heroes, make sane hours a goal. Oh, here's a nice one. Nobody works for a bank here, but I worked many years in a bank, and there's a policy that they used to have, and I imagine it still continues. Whereas if you work in a branch, you needed to take your vacation 2 weeks solid together. And the reason for that was to spot any things they call a defalcation, which is just a fancy word for fraud. So if you were away for 2 weeks, it would have given them time to spot any kind of pulling out of the till or messing around with accounts. And it was true for the branches, and it was also true for people who worked in, public affairs like I did. Anyway, we might have resented it. When do I have to take my vacation? All I want. But the idea of that strikes me as something that we could probably pull into this conversation. Because if I am the boss and I kind of go to Josh and I say, I'd just like you to take the week off, what's going to happen? He's going to get rested and he'll come back not so burned out, but that wasn't my point. What else might happen?
You'll learn to adapt without it.
We'll have to adapt without him. Yeah. We'll also see the places where he was doing stuff, right? So we're kind of going, oh my God, Josh did that. Oh my gosh, Josh did that too. Ooh, who can learn that? What can we do? How can we learn, right? Another thing we might do when Josh gets back is we get him to pair with you so that we have two people who know how to do this. Because sometimes he really has the only thing. So the surprise time off is one that not all of us can do, and it might further the resentment against the hero. But it definitely, just figuring out how can we expose this heroic business. So we got to this part where we need to create a new definition of hero, and what I'm going to do is see whether, oh, it did. If I touch the screen, it works. Okay, so talk about it. Anyway, we've talked about these things. Coach the hero. This is weird. And surprise time off makes an hour. Surprise time off should be the next thing. Yeah. So we're going to go into how do we redefine the hero. We've got to figure out a new meaning for hero. And I think of one of my personal business heroes, a guy named Robert Courtals. He was the president of Toronto Dominion Bank when I was working there. And he said this thing that still sits with me. 6 months is longer in anticipation than it is in retrospect. And it ties back to that idea of planning and that idea of why are we always in a hurry. And I don't even remember what the project was, although I'm sure it was going off the rails. And it was like, we are making mistakes by going too fast, and we really need to think about what is the impact, what is the value. And he had a lot of sort of dangerous thoughts for a bank president in those days. But that was one that really stuck with me, that we really need to think about what are we doing and why are we rushing, and especially in a bank or an insurance company or a telco, everybody has the same products. Why are we rushing to get ours out before theirs? Let's get it right, or see if they even need it. So we're redefining hero. I'm almost out of time. What are the things that a hero would do? Let's just hear about it. A new hero. Go ahead.
Share knowledge.
Share knowledge. What else? Help others grow, right? We've got to build the team's success. And so we need to point it out when they aren't. And we need to point out ways that they can do it. What else? Yay! How do we have that conversation? Was that a conversation we could actually have? How hard would it be? Right? Maybe this is working now. Yeah. Keep an eye on the risks. Encourage a sustainable pace. Look at the impact of your actions. Have healthy discussions about it. Support the team. And I talk sometimes about tact and courage in equal measure. We need to be smart as we're being brave. We need to have those conversations. We need to recognize that other people may have different views, other people may have different information. But bringing this to people's attention helps us create a better team, a better workplace, and a place where we aren't going to be driven crazy or drive others. So my next question,
There's one thing I would add to that, and it's like share their thinking.
Yeah.
So often heroes just present you with a conclusion or a solution or a fix, and there it is, and on to the next. And nobody really understands how he or she got there.
Walk them through their thinking. Yeah. And again, that's something you can do when if you're coaching the hero. So, what can you do? You individual, you leader, you in the organization, a unique creature. What are some of the things you can do? I'm not giving you that minute. But I will let you think. Oh, yes.
Stop giving the answers.
Stop giving the answers. Yeah. So one of the things, if you haven't read it, read David Marquet's book on Turn the Ship Around, because one of his things is, what do you think I'm thinking? That's a great question. What do you think I'm thinking? Don't give them the answers. Let them figure it out themselves. Thank you. Another one. Be brave. That's one of them. We'll get to mine. Be curious. Figure out what's going on. Ask questions. Model the Agile values and practices if you're doing if you're working in the Agile space, and if you're not, you might as well do it anyway. Pair. Who pairs in this group? Yeah, well, yeah, a lot of you are testers, right? So, yeah, so pairing works because it shares the ideas. I gave this talk somewhere. I think it was Winnipeg. They didn't know what pairing was. Wow. Mob. Anyone mob? 2 or 3 in the room. You've tried it? Yeah. Yeah, there's a whole room and one person on the keyboard, and it puts our brains together, and we all learn how people think because we're talking about it as we go. It's a crazy thing because an executive might walk in the room and go, "I have 14 people working on this one thing. This is really expensive," but it's not, because you get a really cool answer. You get the benefit of many brains. You start to bond your team better. All kinds of reasons. If you don't know mobbing, Google it. Google mobbing or Google Woody Zool. He writes about it. And mentor, right? Talk about it. And I believe, get 5% braver. Andrew?
So I just want to share that for me, mobbing is pairing on steroids. And if you need to bring a team up to a common level of understanding around a code base or around the way a particular problem or solution has been structured, mobbing is the way to do it. And you don't have to go all in. I had a team that would mob on one story in a given backlog in a given iteration. And the rest of the time they worked the way they preferred to work. But they elected to mob once. The first time was hard, next time was easier, and then over a period of time they just mobbed more and more and more.
Be careful, I'll have you in here talking about mobbing. Okay, so 5% braver. I had a handout for you to do, but we're out of time, and it was to be just a quick review. If you want to come and take one, they're going to be down here to fill in a handy guide, an aide-memoire, a QRG, whatever you call it, to just remind yourself and take back the things that we talked about here that you could do yourself. And I should have, as a default, put get 5% braver on that, because it's one of those things where we need to have a courageous conversation about this. And the result would be what? We have a conversation, what would happen? I beg your pardon? No hero. Or certainly a new kind of hero, or a different way of thinking about heroics. Yeah. So what happened to Folsom? This is a little bit of an interesting story. He went back to that organization. And wherever he had been, Google, Shopify, OpenText, I don't know where, they either pounded his heroics out of him, or he had examples of how to work well. And he came back and he was a different guy. Well, he was still Folsom, but his behavior had improved incredibly. So that can be done, and I don't know the guy personally, so he could be in the room for all I know. And so some references if you're looking for them. A lot of this comes, the idea for this comes from a very old project management book, A Hero Behind Every Tree. If you haven't looked at Roger Schwartz, he's a really, really good, that book is really interesting. Smart Leaders, Smarter Teams. He just talks about mindset and how your brain works. Teaming, always good, Amy Edmondson stuff. And this book, Leading Geeks, available in the Kitchener and the Waterloo Public Library. It's still available, I think, on Amazon, but it is a fabulous book about how an engineering brain can work in a different way than a lot of people, you know, who might be their managers do, or also if you are the one with the engineering brain, where things are going off the rails for you. So I thank you all. If you're looking to find me, usually I have to put a map that shows where Waterloo is, but there we go. That's how to find me. Thank you all. And I think I have music.